But we'll begin in Abuja, where President Bola Tinubu says Nigeria will overcome terrorism and banditry, assuring citizens that security and economic recovery remains at the heart of his administration's priorities. President gave the assurance while declaring open the second National Economic Council Conference in Abuja, bringing together governors, ministers, lawmakers, development partners, and private sector leaders to chart a new path for inclusive growth. TVC News State House correspondent Femi Akonde reports.
At a time Nigeria continues to grapple with security challenges in parts of the country, President Bola Tinubu used the National Economic Council Conference to send a strong message of reassurance. Addressing governors and key national stakeholders at the State House Conference Center, the president described terrorism and banditry as threats alien to Nigeria's values, insisting they must and will be defeated.
We face inherent structural challenges, including macroeconomic imbalances, infrastructural deficits, unemployment, poverty, climate vulnerabilities, and limited physical space. Yet, our people possess the resilience, creativity, and determination to overcome these realities.
The conference themed Delivering Inclusive Growth and Sustainable National Development, the Renewed Hope National Development Plan 2026 to 2030 is designed to strengthen economic coordination between federal and state governments. President Bola Tinubu noted that ongoing reforms have begun to stabilize the economy, improve revenue flows to states, and enable subnational governments to invest more in infrastructure and social services.
We have strengthened the macroeconomic stability through improved revenue performance, stronger public financial management, and enhanced physical coordination. We have prioritized infrastructural development across the transportation, power, digital connectivity, housing, and irrigation as a catalyst for inclusive growth.
Chairman of the National Economic Council and Vice President Kashim Shettima described NEC as the most important platform for aligning development priorities across Nigeria's diverse regions.
Delivering inclusive growth and sustainable national development could not be more apt. Across developed economies, the prevailing wisdom is no longer growth for its own sake, but growth that accommodates all and endures. This philosophy underpins the global pursuit of the Sustainable Development Goals. Our pathway to this reality lies in reinventing our strategies, harmonizing our visions across all tiers of government, and taking decisive steps towards building a resilient and equitable economy.
Governors at the conference also pledged their commitment to implementing policies agreed at NEC meetings to drive development across states. With renewed commitments from federal and state leaders, Nigerians now watch closely to see how quickly policy decisions translate into improved living conditions nationwide. Femi Akonde, TVC News, Abuja.
All right, joining us live now is Mr. Tega Ogra. He's a Senior Special Assistant on Digital and New Media to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Thank you so much for joining us on the news at 10. Well, I would start with the fallout of these reforms. Yeah, thank you. And of course, just last week, the World Bank was commending President Bola Tinubu. And now President Bola Tinubu is coming up again to say, we'll follow up with these reforms, whatever it takes and all. But my question to you would be, how do we address this fallout? In that speech, your overview, President talked about expanding social investments and all of that. Can you tell us what is the takeout for you in the President's speech?
So I was so pleased with today's speech by Mr. President, His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. And his speech talked about, it was delivered with clarity, with resolve and shared responsibility. And three things actually stood out for me. And the first one would be that, there is no use pretending otherwise, that we are at a turning point in our life as a nation. 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, when this government came into office, For the past 2 years, it's been about us being in an emergency situation, in trying to recover and trying to, set the framework back in a way that is sustainable. And we can proudly say at this point in time that we have moved on from that phase. We have moved on to a recovery phase. And that was something that the president, really highlighted on. The macroeconomics is stable. The CBN has done a wonderful job under, Mr. Cardoso. We've had a lot of the exchange rates, has stabilized mostly. People can plan, businesses can plan forward. And, we have clarity as to where we're going to. Secondly, is that the reforms are no longer, an end in itself. The reforms were intended as they were designed, to provide for dignity, to provide for opportunity, and, most especially to provide the tools for Nigeria to be able to, go on to this next phase of transformation. And then finally, something else that the president really said is that national progress is not the job of the federal government alone. All hands must be on deck. The federal government, the state governments, all federating units, and the local governments have to work together to achieve this. And in order to achieve this, we have to start thinking of infrastructure. Infrastructure not just in constructing roads and bridges, but infrastructure even in things like irrigation. When you talk about irrigation, you're talking about the rural economy, which the president actually mentioned. We're talking about the rural economy. How are we going to help the rural economy, thrive? How are we going to help them, ensure that Nigeria can have food security? Because most of the food that we produce in Nigeria comes from the rural areas. In doing so, in investing in irrigation, we're building the rural economy, we're ensuring food security for the nation, but ultimately, we're also ensuring that, social investment for this group of people can occur. They can begin to improve on their livelihoods, they can begin to have a ready market, which is now more prosperous as a result of other activities that the government has done. For instance, the student loan, which has put more money in families' pockets, the tax laws, which has ensured that even without salary increases, a lot of people at the bottom of the pyramid can actually have more money in their pockets, more revenue in the pockets, which can in turn, be used to inflate the economy. So we're past the emergency phase. We're now in a recovery phase where measurable, and implementation and measurable impact matters.
All right, finally, 2026 to 2030 Renewed Hope National Development Plan. Of course, we've seen the stability you talked about, the foreign exchange market, foreign reserves being stable and all. But can we highlight some key points in that development plan? I see diversification and productivity. To me, that's key. But can we talk more around that as we wrap this up?
So we spoke about a lot of things in the plan, from using a bottom-up approach, which is very, very important. Prior to now, it's always been a top-down approach. The government, the federal government, the government at the center designs something, and then everybody has to follow through. You're saying fiscal federalism, which we have already begun to implement, for instance, with increased FAC to other subnationals from the state governments and the local governments. They're getting more money. They're able to, start putting more efforts at the grassroots level, and that's, impacts upwards. We're also talking about the Renewed Hope World Development Program, which ensures that at every single ward in this country, people, the citizens of Nigeria, can be involved in the development of their nation. They are responsible for some aspect of development in this nation. We're talking about security. Security, yes, we've been bedeviled by a lot of security issues in Nigeria for the past few years, but we're now talking about security. How can we move forward, building upon, the wins that we have made in the last 2 years? We're not pretending that, it's been all rosy. No, we're not acknowledging, the pains of Nigerians out there. No, we're saying, going forward, this is what we have done. We're going to improve upon our security. We're going to continue to put in more money to ensure that our armed forces, who are doing excellently well, laying down their lives for us to be able to have this interview today, laying down their lives for us to be able to go to work, for us to be able to pursue other economic activities. We are thinking of how to improve the security so that that's at the end of it, can affect every other part of our lives, whether it's economic activity, whether it's social activity, and all that. But going into 2030, what it has shown is that now we have a plan. Now we're willing to implement. Now we can measure every single step, of our developmental journey. And Nigeria will be better for it.
All right, Mr. Tega, I must thank you so much for your time. We'll surely have this conversation on Business Nigeria. Well, Senior Special Assistant on Digital and New Media to President Bola Tinubu. Thank you.